Forest mysteries. Dawn broke over the tangled canopy of the dense forest, casting a muted gray light that struggled to pierce through the thick leaves. A faint mist curled around the trunks, drifting like ghostly veils in the cool air. The scent of damp earth and rotting foliage filled Lena's nostrils, interrupted only by the distant, irregular calls of waking birds that seemed hesitant, almost uncertain in their song. Silence stretched heavily across the landscape, broken intermittently by the faint crackle of twigs underfoot and the rustling of unseen creatures slipping just beyond sight. Lena paused at the forest's edge, her boots sinking slightly into the muddy ground. She carried a compact backpack, a GPS device, and a small notebook tucked in her coat pocket. Her eyes flicked over the scene, immediately noticing subtle irregularities. The usual signs of wildlife, small tracks, broken twigs, chewed leaves, were present, yet something felt off. She crouched, scanning the ground with sharp, practiced eyes. A series of shallow impressions caught her attention, too uniform, too precise. They weren't typical animal footprints. She knelt, brushing aside leaves and dirt to examine the prints more carefully. The tracks were narrow, almost humanoid in shape, but spaced unevenly, as if hurriedly left in a panic. Nearby, faint disturbances in the soil suggested a struggle or a frantic retreat. Her brow furrowed, heart pounding with a mixture of concern and curiosity. She pulled out her notebook, quickly sketching the impressions and jotting notes, her fingers trembling slightly despite her efforts to stay composed. A strange, unsettling scent drifted into her nostrils, faint but unmistakably unnatural. It was human, she thought initially, but layered with a chemical tang that didn't belong in this pristine environment. She inhaled again, trying to identify the mixture. The smell lingered stubbornly, disrupting the natural musk of moss and damp wood. Something artificial had been introduced here, disturbing the forest's quiet harmony. Her gaze shifted toward the denser part of the woods, where shadows seemed to deepen and the trees grew more tangled. She hesitated, instinct prickling with caution. This was no ordinary disappearance. Something about the scene compelled her to investigate further, to uncover what lay hidden beneath the canopy's calm exterior. From her vantage point, she spotted a faint trail leading deeper into the thicket. The footprints continued along it, gradually fading into the undergrowth. She straightened, brushing dirt from her knees, and unzipped her backpack to retrieve a small flashlight and gloves. The flashlight was vital. The morning shadows grew longer as the sun struggled to penetrate the thick foliage. The gloves would prevent her from contaminating potential evidence. Moving cautiously, Lena advanced into the forest, each step deliberate yet silent. The woods seemed to watch her, branches creaking softly, leaves whispering in the breeze. The oppressive silence pressed against her ears, broken only by the distant hum of insects stirring to life. Every sound was amplified, every movement heightened by the tension that hung in the air. She kept her eyes sharp, scanning the ground and the trees for any additional clues that might reveal what had transpired here. Suddenly, her gaze caught a smear on a nearby tree bark, dark, streaked, almost like dried blood, but too faint and irregular to be conclusive. She approached carefully, noting how the marks seemed smeared as if someone had been dragged or had fallen against the trunk in a struggle. Her pulse quickened. Was this connected to the child's disappearance? Could it be evidence of violence or desperation? She knelt again, inspecting the smear more closely. It was inconsistent with animal markings, yet too faint to confirm human blood without proper testing. She pulled out a sterile swab from her kit, carefully collecting a sample while avoiding further disturbance. Her mind raced through possibilities: an abduction, an escape, or something darker, an encounter with someone who didn't want to be found. A sudden flicker of movement caught her eye, an indistinct shadow darting between the trees at the edge of her vision. Her breath caught, and she froze, listening intently. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure, human or animal, slipping silently into the undergrowth. Her fingers tightened around her flashlight, but hesitation held her back. The forest's unpredictability was dangerous. Rushing after fleeting shapes could lead her into a trap. She exhaled slowly, forcing her racing thoughts to settle. Whatever this was, it was complex. She had to rely on her training, trust her instincts, and stay alert. The faint scent still lingered, teasing her with its unnatural hint. Whatever had happened here was far from over. The woods seemed to whisper secrets, and Lena sensed that uncovering them would demand her full focus. As she moved deeper into the thicket, the trail became less distinct, but her senses sharpened. She noticed a faint smear on the bark of a nearby tree, dark, streaked, with a shape suggesting someone had been dragged or had fallen there in a struggle. Her grip tightened around her flashlight. She needed answers fast. The scent, the footprints, the blood-like smear, they all pointed to something darker than a simple disappearance. Her eyes darted around, searching for more clues. The trail was fading, but her instincts told her she was close to something important. She reached into her pocket for a small device, an evidence collector, and swabbed the smear carefully, sealing the sample. Her mind raced with questions. Was this an abduction, an escape, or something else entirely? The signs pointed to violence, desperation, and perhaps an unseen threat lurking just beyond her sight. A sudden movement in the corner of her eye drew her attention. A shadow flickered between the trees, quick and silent. Her breath hitched, and she froze, heart pounding. She raised her flashlight, aiming it toward the movement, but the figure, if it was one, disappeared almost instantly. Her muscles tensed. The forest was alive with unseen eyes, watching, waiting. She exhaled slowly, forcing herself to steady her nerves. Whatever was happening here, it was layered with danger. She knew her gut was right. This wasn't an ordinary case. The unnatural scent, the signs of struggle, the faint smear of blood, they all pointed towards something more sinister. She had to dig deeper to find the truth hidden beneath the canopy's deceptive calm. With renewed determination, Lena pressed forward, the trail guiding her further into the unknown. The trees seemed to close in, shadows stretching longer, darker, as if warning her to proceed with caution. Every step felt heavier, burdened not just by the weight of her mission, but by the sense that she was only scratching the surface of a much larger, more dangerous mystery. Something unseen watched her every move, and her journey into the forest's secrets was just beginning. Lena paused at the edge of the muddy clearing, her eyes scanning the faint outlines pressed into the damp earth. Dawn's first light filtered through the thick canopy, casting shifting shadows over the forest floor. Dew clung to blades of grass, shimmering softly as she crouched to examine the fresh footprints. Her fingers brushed aside a stray leaf, revealing a narrow, hurried trail that zigzagged across the soil. Each step seemed to whisper a hurried story, perhaps a small traveler rushing away from something unseen. Beside her, Yuki's body tensed, nose twitching as he sniffed the air with increasing urgency. His gaze flicked between the trail and the surrounding trees, ears alert. The dog's snout wrinkled, sensing an unfamiliar scent that didn't belong in this quiet dawn. Lena's eyes lifted, sweeping the forest's edge where shadows stretched and mingled with the morning fog. The footprints looked recent, probably after the last rain, yet some disturbed patches suggested someone had deliberately tried to erase their tracks. She lowered herself further, running her fingertips along the uneven impressions. Her brow furrowed as she noted the irregular spacing and faint smudges. A sharp, metallic tang lingered nearby, unmistakably unnatural, cutting through the earthy freshness. She wrinkled her nose, instinctively wary. Was this chemical odor connected to the strange scent she detected earlier? Or was it an entirely new trail, laid deliberately to mislead? Yuki barked softly, breaking her concentration. His snout pointed toward a small patch of disturbed ground where the footprints abruptly stopped. Lena's stomach clenched. The trail simply vanished into a dense thicket, leaving behind churned earth and broken twigs. No further signs of passage. Her gaze sharpened as she studied the abrupt halt. Someone or something had intentionally cut off the trail, replacing it with an unsettling silence. She pushed herself upright, brushing dirt from her knees, her mind racing. The natural flow of the footprints had been interrupted, an obvious sign of concealment. But what drew her attention was the scent's sudden shift. The chemical odor was stronger here, more concentrated, almost palpable in the cool air. It seemed to emanate from a specific direction, pulling her deeper into the undergrowth. Her instincts prickled with suspicion. Yuki growled softly, low warning vibrations vibrating through his chest. His body was tense, ready to spring. Lena reached into her pack, retrieving a small vial of scent markers and a portable detector. She knelt again, pressing the device to the ground. The readings flickered erratically before settling into a pattern that confirmed her fears, trace chemicals that had no place in the wilderness. Her mind worked swiftly. The trail had been deliberately obscured, and now this strange chemical signature pointed elsewhere. She hesitated, weighing her options. Following the new scent might lead her into a trap, but ignoring it risked losing the trail altogether. Her gut told her to trust her dog's instincts, yet caution urged restraint. The forest around them seemed to breathe with quiet menace, shadows stretching longer as the morning advanced. Yuki's nose twitched, then he barked sharply, directing her with a commanding gesture. Lena's grip tightened on her equipment. Carefully, she signaled for him to stay close but not too near, then moved toward the faint scent trail. Her steps were deliberate, ears tuned to every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves. The chemical odor grew more intense, guiding her deeper into the thicket's tangled embrace. The terrain thickened, roots jutted from the ground, fallen branches cluttered her path. Her flashlight's beam sliced through the gloom, illuminating patches of disturbed earth and scattered debris. She passed a fallen log, noticing faint smudges on its bark, possible signs of a struggle or hurried passage. Her eyes flicked over the scene, cataloging every detail. Suddenly, the trail veered sharply right, where a faint scattering of broken twigs and displaced leaves marked recent activity. Lena crouched, examining the ground with precision. The footprints here were fewer, more sporadic, an attempt at stealth. The chemical smell intensified, now tinged with a faint metallic scent that made her skin crawl. She pressed her palm to the damp earth, sensing the pattern of the scent spread. It was no coincidence. Someone had laid a decoy, yet the chemical markers betrayed recent movement. Yuki whimpered, nose pressed to the ground, sensing the change. Lena shot a quick glance over her shoulder, her pulse quickening. The forest seemed to hold its breath, shadows flickering subtly at the edges of her vision. A sudden gust of wind carried the strange chemical aroma further into the woods, sharpening her awareness. Someone was actively manipulating her, either trying to mislead or lure her into a trap. Her fingers hovered over her radio, debating whether to call for backup or rely solely on her instincts. The persistent chemical scent was unnerving, a clear sign of deliberate interference. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. The clues pointed to a calculated deception. Whoever was orchestrating this knew her methods, her tendencies. A faint crackle from the underbrush broke the silence, a subtle disturbance, too faint to identify. Her muscles tensed, every sense alert. The forest around her seemed to pulse with unseen threats. She moved forward cautiously, each step deliberate, every breath measured. The scent grew stronger, guiding her toward an unseen destination, an unknown that threatened to slip beyond her grasp. As she advanced, the terrain grew more treacherous. Roots and fallen branches threatened to trip her. Her flashlight's beam caught glimpses of disturbed earth and torn foliage, signs of recent activity. The scent led her past a fallen log, where faint smudges on the bark suggested a hurried passage or struggle. Her heart hammered as she considered the implications. The trail suddenly veered sharply again toward a small clearing. Here, the chemical odor was thick, almost oppressive. Lena paused, scanning the empty space. No footprints, no signs of recent passage. Just an overgrown patch of earth, silent and still. Her eyes caught a glint among the leaves, a torn piece of fabric, partially concealed beneath the foliage. It was unmistakably part of the child's clothing. A jolt of alarm shot through her. Her gaze sharpened, scanning the surroundings. The trail had led her into a trap, an orchestrated deception designed to mislead her, or perhaps to lure her into an ambush. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. She knew she was no longer merely tracking footprints. She was unraveling a web of manipulation. Her hand instinctively reached for her radio, then hesitated. She needed to decide, retreat and reassess, or press forward into the unknown. The chemical scent persisted, a haunting reminder of the deliberate interference. Her mind raced. Who was orchestrating this? What was their goal? The clues pointed to someone with intimate knowledge of the forest, someone willing to play a dangerous game. Taking a deep breath, Lena steadied herself. She stepped back, carefully avoiding the torn fabric, and looked beyond the shadows. The forest around her was alive with subtle movements, the faint rustling of leaves hinting at unseen observers. She realized she had uncovered only part of the truth. This was a trap, but also a message. Whoever was behind it was confident, perhaps even watching her. Her resolve hardened. She would not be manipulated. She turned away from the clearing, choosing to circle around, seeking a different route that might reveal the real trail. Her senses sharpened, every step deliberate. The chemical odor persisted, but she now understood its purpose: to confuse, to distract. The forest silence was deceptive. Shadows stretched and contracted as she moved, the air thickening with anticipation. She kept her eyes open for new clues: broken branches, displaced stones, signs of recent passage. Her instincts told her that the true trail lay somewhere beyond this trap, waiting to be uncovered. Suddenly, she spotted faint footprints leading toward a denser part of the woods, partially obscured by undergrowth. She approached cautiously, noting the irregular pattern. Someone had tried to hide their tracks. The scent of chemicals was stronger here, almost suffocating. Her heart beat faster, knowing she was closing in on the real source. As she stepped into the deeper shadows, Lena realized her understanding of the case had shifted. The trail was no longer straightforward. The manipulations, the false clues, they all pointed to a cunning opponent who knew her well. Her previous assumptions about the trail's simplicity had been wrong. Now, she saw the bigger picture. This was a game of deception, and she had to stay one step ahead. The trail led her into a small, overgrown clearing. The chemical odor was overwhelming, but no footprints marked recent passage. Instead, scattered among the leaves, she saw a torn piece of fabric, part of the child's clothing. Her stomach clenched. The signs of struggle, the deliberate misdirection, they all indicated that her target was close, but trapped in a web of lies. She paused, listening intently. The forest remained eerily quiet, but her senses told her the real danger was still out there. Someone was watching, waiting for her to make her next move. The game had changed. The trail had led her into a false sense of security, but now she was more determined than ever to find the truth, no matter the cost. With renewed focus, Lena backed away slowly, planning her next approach. She knew the real trail was hidden, perhaps just beyond her sight. The chemical scent still lingered, a taunting reminder that deception was at play. She tightened her grip on her equipment, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The forest was alive with secrets, and she was determined to uncover them before it was too late. Lena moved cautiously through the dense undergrowth, her eyes scanning the overgrown clearing as filtered sunlight pierced the canopy above. The faint scent of burnt wood lingered in the air, hinting at recent activity. Her boots pressed softly against tangled roots and fallen leaves, each step deliberate and silent, driven by the urgency of her investigation. The oppressive silence was punctuated only by the distant rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a bird, echoing through the woods like a reminder that she was not alone. She knelt beside a patch of disturbed earth, her gloved fingers brushing aside twigs and moss. Embedded in the muddy ground was a small footprint, no larger than a child's, hurriedly pressed into the soil. The shape was uneven, with toes slightly splayed and the edges smudged, evidence of a frantic escape or a stumble. Lena's brow furrowed as she carefully examined it, noting the irregularity and the hurried impression. She pulled out her notebook, jotting down measurements, the angle of the print, and any distinguishing marks, trying to assemble a timeline from these faint clues. A torn strip of fabric caught her eye, caught on a jagged branch nearby. Its pale fibers were frayed and ragged, ripped with force. The edges looked as if they had been torn in a struggle, perhaps during a desperate attempt to flee. She carefully unfolded a corner, inspecting the dirt smudged across its surface. The fabric bore faint traces of mud and grass, suggesting it had been dragged or torn recently. She held it up, scanning the surrounding brush for other signs. Yet the area yielded no additional fabric or obvious signs of recent passage. A subtle shift in the air caught her attention. Smoke. Not fresh, but recent enough to imply a small fire had been kindled nearby. She inhaled sharply, trying to determine the direction. The scent drifted from the west, where the trees grew denser and shadows pooled beneath their thick branches. The faint aroma was persistent, enough to make her cautious. Perhaps someone had stayed here temporarily, or the child had been nearby during the fire's flickering glow. Her instincts told her to remain alert. Suddenly, a movement flickered at the edge of her vision, a quick, heavy shift beyond the foliage. Lena froze, her senses sharpening as she strained to see through the tangled leaves. The disturbance was too substantial for a small animal, too deliberate for a breeze. Something was out there, watching her, or perhaps just passing through. Her heartbeat quickened. Her hand instinctively reached for her radio, but she hesitated, knowing silence was paramount. The woods remained still, thick with tension. Lena's mind raced, analyzing each detail: the footprint, the torn fabric, the scent of smoke. Each fragment was incomplete, yet together they painted a picture of hurried departure, of someone fleeing into the shadows. She wondered whether the trail belonged to the missing child or if something else lurked in the woods. The environment seemed to hold secrets, pressing closer with every passing moment. A gust of wind swept through the canopy, stirring the leaves and carrying a new, earthy scent, wild, primal, and not entirely natural. She lowered herself closer to the ground, her eyes darting between the shadows, searching for movement or signs of recent passage. Her pulse steadied as she focused, aware that even the slightest sign could reveal critical information. The clues were sparse, but enough to justify cautious advancement. A distant, muffled thud broke the silence. A heavy, deliberate sound, not a branch snapping, but something larger, perhaps an animal or a shifting weight. Lena's muscles tensed instinctively. She slowly reached for a flashlight, flicking it on with a quiet click. The beam cut through the shadows, illuminating patches of moss and scattered leaves, but revealed no immediate threat. She moved forward carefully, each step deliberate, ears alert for any new sounds. Approaching a fallen log partially hidden among the undergrowth, she paused, listening intently. Behind it, the forest stretched into darkness, silent once again. She stood still for a moment, her eyes scanning the area, trying to catch any movement or sign of recent activity. From her left, just beyond her line of sight, came an irregular scrape, something dragging across the ground. Lena's breath caught as she shifted her position, attempting to glimpse without revealing herself. The forest seemed to hold its breath alongside her, waiting for the next sign, the next clue. Every sense was heightened, yet nothing else moved. Her gaze returned to the area where the torn fabric and footprints converged. She considered the possibilities. Could an animal have taken the child? Or was an intruder still nearby? Perhaps someone who had fled hurriedly? The scent of smoke suggested recent human presence, but the signs of struggle and frantic trail hinted at something more urgent, something that had pushed the person or creature into a state of panic. A sudden gust of wind caused the branches overhead to sway, casting shifting shadows across the clearing. Lena's skin prickled, an instinctual warning. Her eyes darted toward the denser part of the woods, where darkness seemed to pulse with unspoken secrets. She clenched her fists around her equipment, her mind racing to piece together the fragments. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught a fleeting movement, a quick, indistinct shadow slipping between the trees. It might have been an animal, or perhaps a person just out of reach. Her heart quickened again, but she kept her composure, reminding herself that every detail could be vital. As she refocused on her surroundings, a new thought took shape. The recent fire, torn fabric, and muddy footprints might be interconnected. Was someone deliberately misleading her? Or was nature itself concealing a darker truth beneath its surface? The forest seemed to deepen in silence, almost holding its breath. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. The moment, this quiet before an impending revelation, felt pivotal. Her senses sharpened, her resolve hardened. Whatever lurked in the shadows, she was determined to uncover it. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the trees, a deliberate, heavy sound closer than before. Lena's muscles tensed, her grip tightening on her weapon. Her eyes narrowed as she peered into the darkness. The game of clues was far from over. The forest's secrets beckoned, promising answers or more questions. She took a cautious step forward, ready for whatever awaited, knowing that the next move could alter everything. A faint, irregular scrape came from her left, just beyond her line of sight. She froze momentarily, her breath steadying as she tried to discern the source. The woods remained silent but tense, as if holding their breath alongside her. Every nerve was on alert, yet no further movement occurred. Her gaze settled again on the area where the footprints and torn fabric intersected. She pondered the possibilities. Was the child taken by an animal? Or had someone else, an intruder or a guardian, fled hastily? The scent of smoke indicated recent human activity, but the signs of struggle and frantic trail suggested a situation spiraling out of control. A sudden gust of wind stirred the branches overhead, casting shifting shadows across the clearing. Lena felt a prickling at the back of her neck, an instinctual warning. Her eyes darted toward the thicker woods, where darkness seemed to pulse with unspoken secrets. She tightened her grip on her equipment, her mind racing to connect the dots. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a fleeting movement, something large, perhaps an animal, slipping between the trees. Or maybe a person just beyond her reach. Her heartbeat accelerated, but her focus remained sharp. Every detail could be a vital clue. As she turned her attention back to her surroundings, a new idea crystallized. The fire, torn fabric, and footprints might be part of a deliberate deception. Someone could be trying to mislead her, hiding something darker beneath the forest's quiet facade. The woods seemed to deepen, shadows lengthening as if concealing secrets. Her breathing slowed, and she steadied herself. This moment, the silence before a revelation, felt charged. Her senses were heightened, her determination unshaken. Whatever lurked in the shadows, she was ready to confront it. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed nearby, a deliberate, forceful sound. Lena's muscles tensed as she instinctively reached for her weapon, her eyes narrowing into the darkness. The investigation was far from over. The forest's mysteries beckoned, promising answers, and perhaps new dangers. She took a cautious step forward, prepared for what lay ahead, knowing that the next move could change everything. The canopy above was thick and oppressive, filtering the scant light into a dim, mottled glow that barely pierced the shadows. Lena moved cautiously, each step deliberate, her breath shallow and controlled. Yuki, silent and alert, pressed close, nose to the damp earth, scenting the air with a focused intensity. The forest around them was still, save for the faint rustle of leaves stirred by the breeze. An uneasy silence hung, broken only by the faint, metallic tang that clung to the air, an unnatural residue that made her skin crawl. She paused, eyes scanning the tangled undergrowth with heightened vigilance. Shadows stretched and flickered, yet nothing moved except the sway of branches. Her muscles tensed as she strained to hear beyond the whisper of the wind. Then a sudden, sharp crack shattered the quiet, causing her to freeze instantly. Yuki's ears pricked, and he stiffened, hackles rising. His nose twitched sharply, and he emitted a low, tense growl. Lena's hand instinctively went to her radio, but she hesitated, her mind racing. Instead, she kept her grip on her hip, eyes darting through the thicket, trying to interpret the disturbance. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Another rustling sound came, closer now, making her heart pound louder in her ears. She crouched slowly, every movement measured, trying to stay as silent as possible. The faint snapping of twigs and the shifting shadows heightened her anxiety. She knew better than to panic, but her mind spun with possibilities. Was it an animal, a person, or something else entirely? Then, a distant howl pierced the silence, a long, mournful cry that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't threatening, but eerily unfamiliar, echoing between the trees and lingering in the air. Her fingers twitched toward her backpack, where her flashlight and supplies rested, but she paused again. The call's strange cadence felt almost like a signal or a plea, a message from the darkness. Yuki responded with a low, warning growl, his stance tense, ready to lunge or bolt. Lena's gaze fixed on him, catching a flicker of movement behind the trunks. For a moment, she thought she saw something large shifting behind the trees. Her breath hitched as her eyes strained to see through the shadows. Suddenly, everything fell silent again. The woods seemed to exhale, the only sounds the settling rustle of leaves. Lena's eyes darted in all directions, searching for the source of the disturbance. Her muscles remained rigid, every nerve on high alert. Then, her attention was drawn to a nearby patch of earth where a large paw print pressed into the mud, much bigger than any wolf track she'd encountered. The imprint was broad, with elongated toes and deep, curved claws. She knelt, inspecting the mark closely, her brow furrowing. It was fresh, no more than a few hours old, and clearly made by something not entirely animal. Her mind raced, weighing possibilities. Predators rarely left such distinct footprints unless they paused or rested, but this print's size suggested something larger, more formidable. Her gaze flicked back to the trees, then to Yuki, who was now sniffing the ground with increased curiosity. A wave of unease washed over her. Was this creature a predator? Or something else, perhaps linked to human activity or clandestine experiments? The strange chemical scent persisted, more pungent now, hinting at unnatural interference. The silence after the howl felt oppressive, as if the forest itself was watching her. A movement in her peripheral vision made her turn sharply. Her eyes narrowed. Nothing, just shadows playing tricks. Still, her instincts prickled. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling her rapid heartbeat, then pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth. Yuki trotted ahead, nose to the ground, following the faint trail beyond the footprints. Lena kept close, every sense heightened. The woods around them darkened further, shadows stretching and blending into deeper blackness. The trail Yuki followed was faint, overgrown, and tangled, but his nose led them onward, guiding them like a compass. A gentle breeze stirred the canopy overhead, carrying with it a faint metallic scent, more pronounced now, almost tangible. Lena paused, her brow furrowing as she scanned the surroundings. The scent was out of place, too processed, too synthetic for natural woods. It added another layer of suspicion, suggesting human experimentation or clandestine activity. Suddenly, a subtle cracking sound broke the silence, closer, more deliberate. Lena froze, her muscles tensing. Yuki's ears pricked, and he emitted a questioning growl. The sound was followed by a brief pause, then the faint rustling of underbrush, as if something had shifted just beyond her line of sight. Her pulse quickened. She reached for her flashlight, flicking it on with a soft click. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the uneven ground and tangled roots. Nothing was visible, only shadows and the weak glow of moonlight filtering through the leaves. Yet her eyes caught a glint, a large, irregular imprint pressed into the soft earth, partially hidden beneath fallen leaves. She knelt again, brushing aside debris and twigs. The print was unmistakably large, wider than her palm, with an uneven, almost distorted shape. Not quite animal, not entirely human. A strange mixture, leaving her with a sense of dread. Her fingers trembled slightly as she examined it, the realization that something unknown had recently passed through here. Yuki growled softly, pressing his body closer to Lena's side. The silence stretched again, thick and suffocating. Her mind raced, trying to interpret what lurked nearby. Predator, human, or something entirely different. The chemical scent lingered, more intense, hinting at recent human involvement, perhaps a clandestine experiment gone wrong or a covert operation. Then, a faint, distant howl echoed through the trees once more. This time, it sounded different, less mournful, more commanding, almost aggressive. Lena's eyes widened as she stared into the darkness, recognizing that whatever was out, there was aware of her presence now. A decision formed in her mind. She needed to move, find higher ground, a vantage point, or a safe spot where she could observe without being seen. But hesitation had cost her precious seconds. The woods around her seemed to pulse with life, shadows deepening, the air turning colder. The large paw print pressed into the earth like a silent warning. Whatever creature had left, it was larger than a wolf, and it was still out there, watching, waiting. Lena tightened her grip on her gear, her instincts telling her that her journey into this unknown forest was only beginning, and that the secrets hidden here were more dangerous than she had imagined. Her awareness had expanded, and with it, her understanding that she was no longer alone in these shadows. The forest around Lena thickened into shadows as dusk deepened, the canopy blotting out most of the fading light. Twisted branches stretched like grasping claws, and the air grew heavy with a damp, earthy scent. A faint, trembling cry pierced the silence, fragile yet urgent, pulling Lena forward with an instinct she couldn't ignore. Yuki's ears twitched at the sound, muscles tense as he sniffed the breeze, catching traces of unfamiliar fear and something metallic, sharp and close, yet elusive. Her heart thudded faster, boots muffling their steps over fallen leaves and snapped twigs. Every movement was cautious, her eyes flickering through the gloom for any sign of danger. The cry echoed again, softer but more desperate, bouncing between the trees and urging her onward. Questions spun in her mind. Was it the child? Or something else entirely? The forest seemed alive, whispering warnings in a language only she sensed but couldn't quite understand, as if it were breathing secrets into the night. Suddenly, Lena spotted a small hollow, cleverly hidden beneath a tangle of broken branches and dense foliage. Its edges were jagged, leaves and twigs forming a natural barrier for prying eyes. She moved slowly, Yuki close beside her, nose to the ground, sensing the urgency. Carefully, she cleared the debris, revealing a tiny figure curled inside, trembling with silent fear. The child's dirt-streaked face was streaked with tears, eyes darting wildly. Yet a flicker of relief appeared when Lena crouched nearby. "Hey, it's okay," Lena whispered softly, voice steady but gentle. "I'm here to help. You're safe now." Her hand reached out cautiously, avoiding sudden movements, as the child flinched at first but then relaxed slightly under her touch. Lena's chest tightened at the fragile vulnerability before her. She pulled her jacket from her shoulders, wrapping it around the trembling form, and scanned the shadows for any sign of approaching danger. The child's trembling voice broke the silence, edged with fear and curiosity. "Big shadow," he whispered hoarsely, clutching Lena's sleeve. "It's watching. I saw it. It's big and dark. It's everywhere." His words spilled out hurriedly, eyes fixed on the gloom beyond the hollow, as if the darkness itself threatened to swallow them whole. Lena's breath caught at his words, a surge of dread tightening her chest. The boy's description aligned with her own suspicions. Something unseen, lurking in the shadows, perhaps an unseen predator or a manifestation of his terror. She tightened her grip on him, trying to steady her own nerves. "Where did you see it? Tell me everything," she asked softly, voice trembling but determined. He hesitated, then pointed trembling toward the shadows. "Behind the trees, near the big rock. It moved. I think it was looking at me. I heard breathing. I ran." His voice cracked, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "It's not like anything I've ever seen before." Yuki's nose twitched sharply, and he growled low, hackles rising as he sniffed the air again. The metallic scent Lena had noticed earlier grew stronger, mingling with the damp earth and faint decay. Something was definitely amiss. She looked toward the direction the boy indicated, senses sharpening. Shadows flickered and shifted at the edge of her vision, teasing her perception, but she saw no clear shape, only the oppressive darkness pressing inward. A sudden rustle behind her made her spin around, instinctively reaching for a flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing only swaying branches and a flicker of movement that vanished before she could focus. Her pulse quickened, but she held her ground, tried to detect any sign of the elusive big shadow. The forest's quiet hostility pressed against her, as if warning her to retreat, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. The child whimpered softly, clutching Lena's sleeve tighter. "It's coming," he whispered again, voice trembling with dread and a flicker of hope. "You have to go. Please." His words hung in the air, heavy with a plea that Lena felt deep in her bones. Lena nodded sharply. "We're leaving now. Stay close and quiet." Her mind raced, weighing options, knowing that whatever lurked in the darkness was beyond her immediate understanding. The shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, threatening to swallow everything in silence and fear. She carefully lifted the child, holding him against her side, signaling Yuki to follow. Every step was deliberate, measured, as they moved through the tangled undergrowth, away from the hollow and the unseen threat. The cry had faded into an unsettling silence, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves and the irregular breathing of the forest. Lena's senses remained on high alert, her eyes scanning for any sign of movement, her ears tuned to every sound. As they pressed deeper into the woods, Lena's mind refused to relax. The whispers of that big shadow, the child's trembling voice, and the metallic tang in the air all pointed to something profoundly unnatural. She realized she was no longer merely following clues or footprints. The environment itself was shifting into a more dangerous, unpredictable realm. A sudden snap beneath her foot froze her in place. Heart pounding anew, she crouched, eyes darting through the darkness, searching for movement. Nothing visible, but the feeling of being watched persisted, thickening the air with anticipation. She tightened her grip on the child, whispering calming words, trying to steady herself and him. In the distance, a faint flicker of light appeared, a weak glow beyond the trees, perhaps a sign of human presence or a refuge. Lena hesitated, torn between moving towards safety or investigating the glow. Every second spent pondering increased the risk of confrontation with whatever lurked unseen. Her instincts urged her to stay vigilant, to trust her senses because the presence watching them was still out there, waiting in the shadows. A sudden gust of wind swept through, carrying a chilling whisper that sounded almost like a voice, indistinct but undeniably sinister. Lena clenched her jaw, steeling herself. Fear would not dictate her steps now. The faint hope of safety was fragile but real. Shadows stretched longer, darker, as if eager to claim her and the boy. With a final glance at the encroaching darkness, Lena moved swiftly toward the faint glow, clutching the trembling child close, Yuki alert at her side. The forest's silent menace still lurked behind the veil of trees, but she refused to be paralyzed. Her goal was clear: find safety, uncover the truth, and confront whatever awaited beyond the shadows. The night was far from over, but one thing was certain: she was no longer alone in her fight. The shadows pressed heavily against the forest canopy, the last remnants of twilight swallowed by an impenetrable darkness. Every rustle of leaves, every distant crack of a branch seemed amplified in the stillness, as if the woods themselves held their breath. Lena shivered despite her layered clothing, feeling the cold seep into her bones. Her eyes darted between the faint glow of the moon struggling through thick clouds and the surrounding gloom, searching desperately for any sign of movement. They had chosen this small clearing deliberately, a place where undergrowth concealed their presence but still offered a vantage point for listening to approaching sounds. Lena's heart pounded, each breath visible in the icy air. Her mind spun with conflicting options: stay and hope for the best, or slip into the shadows and risk losing the child forever. Amir stood tense beside her, his jaw clenched, eyes flickering through the darkness with a mixture of determination and doubt. He broke the silence with a whisper, voice low but firm. "We can't remain here all night. Whatever is coming, be it human or beast, it'll find us if we don't move." Lena nodded, her trembling fingers clutching her jacket tighter. "We need to decide quickly. Staying puts us at risk, but running blindly could mean abandoning the child in the chaos." She paused, eyes fixed on the shadows, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility pressing down. "If we leave now, we might lose the trail entirely. If we stay, we risk an encounter with whatever's out there." A gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a faint, chilling sound, a distant, rhythmic footfall. Both froze, ears straining, eyes narrowing as they tried to decipher the approaching noise. It grew louder, more deliberate, muffled but unmistakable. Footsteps, heavy and steady, approaching from the north. "Do you hear that?" Lena whispered, voice strained with tension. Amir nodded, his expression darkening. "Could be a person, someone searching for us, or something else. Something worse." The moonlight revealed a flicker of movement beyond the clearing's edge, shadows shifting among the trees. Lena's instincts kicked in, weighing her options again. Should they hide and hope the figure passes, risking an unseen threat, or attempt to signal them, risking detection? Her mind raced for a plan. "Should we hide?" Amir suggested softly, voice barely audible. "Or try to call out? If it's rescue, we need to be ready. If it's danger, staying silent might be safer." Lena hesitated, then shook her head. "No, hiding now is too risky. They might spot us if we move. We have to stand our ground. Wait and see who or what is coming. If it's hostile, we'll need to be prepared." She reached into her pocket, clutching the small flashlight she carried, flicking it on briefly to test its power. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a patch of ground ahead before fading into shadows. She kept it ready, fingers poised to activate at the slightest movement. The footsteps grew louder, more distinct. Lena's muscles tensed as her mind scrambled through possible scenarios. Could it be the villagers? Someone from the nearby settlement, perhaps searching for the lost child? Or was it something else? An animal or an intruder attracted by the chaos? Suddenly, a branch snapped nearby, sharply piercing the silence. Lena's heart leaped into her throat. Instinctively, she aimed the flashlight toward the sound, the beam piercing the darkness. But only dense trees stared back, silent witnesses to the noise. Still, the echo lingered, a reminder that danger lurked just beyond their line of sight. Amir shifted slightly, positioning himself behind Lena, ready to defend or retreat if necessary. The oppressive silence stretched on, broken only by the rhythmic approach of footsteps that seemed to reverberate within her skull. From the shadows emerged a figure, tentative but purposeful. The silhouette was vague, but Lena could make out a tall shape cloaked in a hooded garment, face partially obscured. The figure paused at the edge of the clearing, eyes faintly gleaming in the moonlight as they studied the pair. Lena's pulse quickened. She held her breath, waiting for the figure to move. The air grew thick, every second feeling stretched and heavy. Her mind raced with possible motives, friend or foe, salvation or threat. The figure shifted slightly, voice muffled but unmistakably human. Are you, Lena? Her eyes widened in surprise, but she kept the flashlight steady. Who's asking? She responded cautiously, voice trembling just enough to betray her nerves. A brief pause. Then the figure stepped forward, revealing a face partly hidden beneath the hood. Amir sent me. I am Semur. I've been tracking that creature, trying to understand what's behind this chaos. Lena exchanged a quick glance with Amir, who nodded subtly. The tension eased slightly, but suspicion still lingered. Why now? Why come at night? Samir lowered his voice. Because I knew you'd be here, and because whatever's out there, something dangerous, knows we're close. We don't have much time to decide. A distant growl echoed through the trees, muffled but unmistakable. Lena's stomach clenched. The approaching threat was no longer human. Or maybe it was, but something inhuman lurked behind its eyes. She tightened her grip on the flashlight, her eyes narrowing. What do you suggest? Do we confront it? Or try to slip away? Samir looked toward the shadows, then back at them. If we stay, we risk drawing it out. If we move, we might lose it entirely. But whatever it is, it's hunting us now. We can't afford to wait. The footsteps grew louder, more insistent. Shadows flickered at the edge of the clearing, rushing toward them. Lena's mind raced, weighing her options. Her decision had to be swift. She took a deep breath, voice steady despite her trembling. We stay alert. We prepare for what's coming. If it's human, we face it. If not, we hide or fight, but we don't run blindly. As she finished speaking, the first figure stepped fully into the moonlit opening, tall, motionless, with glowing eyes reflecting the faint light. The creature's limbs seemed unnaturally elongated, its movements eerily silent. Lena froze, realizing the truth. This was no ordinary beast. It was a predator from nightmares, and their hesitation might be their last chance to act. Suddenly, the creature's gaze fixed on them, and Lena understood. Her choice to confront or evade would shape their fate, not just for her and Amir, but for the child they sought to protect. The forest held its breath as the darkness threatened to swallow them whole. The flickering glow of the fire cast shifting shadows across the weathered wooden walls of the secluded cabin, blending seamlessly into the dense forest that surrounded it. The air was thick with the scent of smoldering wood and damp earth, and a persistent chill seeped into Lena's bones despite the warmth of the flames. Standing just outside the doorway, she kept Yuki alert beside her, the dog's ears pricked forward, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the tree-line. The night was eerily silent, broken only by the crackle of the fire and distant rustling of leaves. Yet Lena felt an unshakable tension tightening her chest, as if unseen eyes watched her from the shadows. She had arrived only an hour earlier, following faint footprints veering away from the main trail into this hidden clearing. Her heart still pounded from the rush of recent discoveries, scraps of torn fabric, hurried footprints, and an unsettling, faint chemical scent lingering in the air. She examined the cabin carefully, her mind racing with questions. Was help finally arriving? Or was she walking into another trap, set by unseen enemies? A sudden movement snapped her attention. From the darkness, a figure emerged slowly, deliberately, approaching the fire with cautious steps. Tall, lean, with a face weathered by years of exposure, he moved with purpose. Lines etched deep into his skin hinted at hardship, Yet his sharp eyes scanned the surroundings with a predator's vigilance, sizing her up in the flickering light. He paused at the edge of the glow, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "I mean no harm," he said, voice calm but edged with wariness. "Name's Marcus." Lena took a cautious step forward, Yuki tensing beside her. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, voice steady but guarded. The man's gaze flicked past her, sweeping the trees, then returned to her face. "I've been tracking something unusual," Marcus replied, his tone tense. "Thought I might find answers here." His words carried an air of familiarity with the woods, as if he belonged to this forest as much as it belonged to him. Lena hesitated, clutching her jacket tighter. Her instincts warned her to stay alert, yet hope flickered. Perhaps this stranger knew something about the child's whereabouts. "You saw the kid?" she pressed. He nodded slowly. "Not far from here, near the eastern edge of the forest. I found footprints, fresh ones, followed them, but then the trail vanished into a thicket as if someone or something was pulled away suddenly." Her brow furrowed. "Are you sure? How can you tell?" Marcus pointed toward the ground. "The tracks are recent, no more than a few hours old. Heavy steps, quick pace. And there's a scent, something chemical, unnatural. Sharp. It's not like anything I've encountered before. It lingers, unsettling. Something's off about this whole area." Yuki growled softly, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air near Marcus. Lena's eyes narrowed. "You've been tracking this for a while?" He nodded again. "A couple of days. I've seen signs of human activity, sporadic footprints, scattered signs, usually hunters or loggers passing through. But lately, I've noticed strange anomalies, unexplained noises, odd odors, footprints that don't match any local residents." Lena listened intently, weighing his words. The pieces of her own investigation aligned with his account. The forest was alive with secrets, and someone or something was deliberately hiding them. "Why come out here now?" she asked. Marcus looked away, eyes shadowed. "Tonight, I saw something, an unnatural glow deep in the woods. Not a campfire, not a lantern, something else. I followed it, hoping it would lead to answers. Instead, I found these." He gestured vaguely toward the trees. "Signs of recent disturbance, the scent I mentioned. Whatever's out here, it's active again." A flicker of realization crossed Lena's mind. Could this be connected to the child's disappearance? To the strange phenomena she'd been uncovering? The forest was a labyrinth of clues, and now an outsider with vital knowledge was offering help. But trust was fragile here. "Have you seen anyone else?" she asked cautiously. He shook his head. "No, but I've heard things, noises at night, branches snapping when no one's around. I've also noticed footprints, larger, heavier, as if someone's been dragging something or someone." A sudden gust of wind carried a faint metallic scent that made her stomach tighten. She looked back toward the trees, then at Marcus. "Why tell me this? What do you want?" He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. "Because I believe we're after the same thing, and I don't want this to end badly for whoever's out here. I've been watching, waiting, trying to understand what's happening. I don't trust easily, but I see you're committed to finding that child. Maybe we can help each other." Her fingers clenched around her jacket. The proposal was tempting, yet her instincts screamed caution. An outsider claiming knowledge of the forest's secrets, offering alliance. Trusting him blindly could be dangerous. But dismissing his help might cost her precious time and vital clues. "All right," she said slowly, voice measured. "Show me where you saw the glow. If you're lying or if this leads us into a trap, I'll walk away." Marcus nodded, his face settling into a serious expression. "Follow me. I know these woods better than most. We don't have much time. Whatever's out here, it's stirring again." Yuki barked softly and led the way into the shadows. Lena hesitated only a moment before following, her senses sharpened. The forest seemed to hold its breath, shadows flickering at the edge of her vision, whispering secrets she was only beginning to understand. As they moved deeper into the darkness, Lena's perception shifted. The familiar landscape now felt unfamiliar, charged with unseen threats. Something had changed tonight, an undercurrent of danger that threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew about this place, and perhaps about herself. In that moment, she realized her understanding of the forest and her mission had expanded. The clues she had gathered so far were pieces of a larger puzzle, one that now included Marcus, whose knowledge could be pivotal. Trust was fragile, but her resolve grew stronger. She would follow this lead, no matter where it took her, because the stakes had just risen. Her knowledge of the truth and the safety of the child depended on it. Lena paused on the edge of the narrow trail, her eyes scanning the dense canopy overhead, where the early morning light struggled to pierce through the thick leaves. The forest around her was unnervingly silent, the usual chorus of chirping birds and rustling foliage absent, replaced by an oppressive hush that seemed to press against her skin. Her breath formed faint clouds in the crisp air as she studied the faint, recent footprints pressed into the damp earth, leading onward with uncertain clarity. A subtle metallic tang lingered nearby, faint but persistent, hinting at something unnatural lurking in the shadows. She knelt carefully, her gloved fingers tracing the fragile impressions. The footprints were fresh, no more than a few hours old, and showed signs of hurried movement, scuffed edges, a slight dragging of one foot. Scattered leaves and broken twigs nearby suggested someone had pushed through the undergrowth with urgency, perhaps trying to conceal their trail. The uneven terrain, with roots protruding like natural traps, demanded cautious steps. Every move had to be deliberate. Yuki, her loyal companion, sniffed the air intently, ears alert, tail low but tense. His nose twitched repeatedly, catching scents Lena couldn't detect. The silence around them thickened, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Lena glanced at her watch, noting the time. It was early, but not too soon, enough for someone to have passed through recently. Her mind raced, weighing possibilities. Was this a sign of someone fleeing, or perhaps the trail of the person who had been here before her? Suddenly, Yuki stiffened, ears pricking sharply as he fixated on a patch of disturbed undergrowth a few meters ahead. Lena followed his gaze and saw a faint imprint pressed into the muddy ground, an irregular, shallow mark that wasn't quite a shoe print but suggested recent passage. She moved closer, crouching to examine it. The impression was too faint for certainty, yet it hinted at a hurried departure. Her instincts prickled with suspicion, and she felt a surge of adrenaline. She pulled out her field notebook, sketching the shape quickly before jotting down notes. The evidence was fragile but promising. Her eyes shifted to the surrounding trees, where broken branches and displaced foliage indicated someone had pushed through forcefully. A sense of urgency settled within her. This trail was promising but incomplete, leading into thick undergrowth and shadowed hollows where visibility was limited. Her gaze caught a faint trail of disturbed leaves and a lingering chemical scent, subtle but unmistakable. It was an unnatural trace in this untouched wilderness. She recalled earlier reports of strange odors and suspected that whoever, or whatever, had passed through recently was connected to the larger mystery she was unraveling. The scent was a fragment of a bigger puzzle, hinting at clandestine activity. Yuki's nose twitched again, and he growled softly, low and steady. Without hesitation, he pressed forward, nose close to the ground, tail stiff. Lena hesitated for a moment, then decided to follow his lead. She adjusted her backpack and stepped onto the trail, her senses heightened. The forest seemed to close in around her, shadows stretching longer as the sun climbed higher. Minutes passed as Lena moved cautiously, every step deliberate. The trail grew less distinct. Footprints faded into patches of disturbed earth and scattered debris. She paused at a small clearing where the ground was churned up, possibly by someone trying to hide or escape. She examined the marks, noting their size and direction, then looked beyond toward a thicket where branches were bent and torn, as if someone had pushed through in haste. A sudden breeze stirred the leaves, carrying a faint metallic odor, rust, or perhaps old machinery, another strange scent that didn't belong in the natural environment. Her pulse quickened slightly. Each new fragment deepened the mystery. She was close now, or at least as close as she could be without concrete evidence. Her phone vibrated softly in her pocket. She pulled it out, hesitating. The screen flashed with a message from her team. Asterisk possible camp detected, coordinates nearby. Asterisk her heart rate increased. She looked around, contemplating her next move. The camp could be abandoned or occupied. Either way, it was a lead worth pursuing. Steadying herself with a deep breath, she nodded decisively. Carefully, she veered toward the indicated area, moving through the undergrowth with quiet determination. The faint trail of footprints grew more recent as she approached a concealed clearing. Here, signs of recent activity were unmistakable. A makeshift shelter, discarded clothing, and small scattered items, remnants of a hurried stay. Lena crouched, examining the ground around the camp. Fresh footprints circled the area, leading away into the woods once more. The camp was abandoned, but the evidence suggested someone had been here only moments ago. A mixture of cautious triumph and lingering doubt washed over her. Who was here, and where had they gone? Her eyes swept the scene, searching for anything out of place. A torn piece of fabric fluttered in the breeze. She reached out, carefully pulling it from the undergrowth. The fabric was damp and stained, likely from struggle. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the sequence of events. Someone had been hiding, fleeing, or perhaps waiting. Suddenly, a rustling noise in the bushes made her freeze. Yuki growled low, hackles raised. Lena's heartbeat quickened, instinctively reaching for her radio, but her hand hesitated. Silence stretched around her, thick with unspoken threats. She knew this was only the beginning. The trail led deeper into danger, into the unknown. As she slowly rose, her gaze fixed on the trail, stretching into the shadows, she realized that whoever had been here last had left behind more than footprints. They had left a trail into something darker. Her grip tightened on her equipment. She moved forward, determined to follow the clues, knowing that each step brought her closer to answers, and possibly into peril. But now her perspective had shifted. The investigation was no longer just about tracking footprints or scents. It was about confronting the unseen forces at play. The clues pointed toward a clandestine operation, or perhaps something more sinister lurking in the woods. The recent signs of disturbance, combined with the strange chemical scent, suggested that a confrontation was imminent. As she pressed on, Lena's mind was clearer. She understood that her pursuit had changed the stakes. She was no longer just an observer, but an active participant in unraveling a mystery that could threaten her or others. Her awareness deepened, and her resolve hardened. Whatever secrets lay ahead, she was ready to face them. The trail into the forest grew darker, more tangled. Shadows stretched longer, and the air grew heavier. Lena's senses sharpened, her focus unwavering. She knew that each clue, each sign, was a piece of a larger puzzle, and that the next step could reveal the truth or plunge her into unforeseen danger. With renewed determination, she stepped forward, ready to confront whatever awaited in the depths of the woods. The narrow trail twisted through tangled undergrowth, slick with recent rain that had left patches of mud clinging to the uneven ground. Lena's boots squelched softly with each cautious step, her muscles tense from the effort and the weight of exhaustion pressing heavily on her shoulders. Yet her gaze remained fixed ahead, sharp and alert. Her breathing was steady, controlled, an attempt to steady her nerves as her lungs fought to keep pace with her pounding heart. The scent of damp earth and decayed leaves mingled with a faint metallic tang that prickled her nostrils, whispering of violence and bloodshed that might have occurred here. She clenched her fists around the straps of her backpack, fingers numb but unwavering. The trail was faint but discernible. Imprints pressed into the mud, hurried and uneven, leading directly toward the cliff edge overlooking the valley below. The evidence was undeniable. Whoever had been here last had been fleeing or desperately searching for something. Lena's eyes flicked between the ground and the twisted branches of nearby trees, searching for any sign of recent disturbance. Nothing obvious broke the monotony of the muddy path, yet her instincts prickled, warning her that danger lurked just beyond her line of sight. Suddenly, the forest's ambient sounds shifted. The rustling of leaves, normally a gentle whisper, intensified briefly before falling silent again. Lena's pulse quickened. She instinctively lowered herself behind a thick tree trunk, pressing her back against the rough bark as her eyes darted around. Her hand hovered near her radio clipped to her belt, but she hesitated. Calling for backup might reveal her position. Instead, she strained her ears, listening intently for movement or voices. Silence stretched for a heartbeat. Then a sharp crack shattered the quiet. Something heavy or metallic had broken nearby. Her body tensed, and she pressed closer to the tree, eyes narrowing as she scanned the shadowed undergrowth. The sound had come from behind her, somewhere to the north. Her mind raced, weighing her options: stay hidden or move cautiously forward. The trail had a lead toward the cliff, and retreat wasn't an option. She needed to follow it to uncover what had transpired. The footprints pressed onward, the last marks of frantic passage, edges smudged and uneven, evidence of a struggle or a hurried escape. A gust of wind swept through the canopy, carrying with it the scent of damp moss and something sharper, perhaps oil, chemicals, or burnt rubber. Lena's brow furrowed. This unnatural odor was out of place amid the natural decay. Her gaze returned to the footprints. noting how they approached the precipice's edge. The ground was loose, gravel slipping beneath her boots as she moved closer. Each step was deliberate, cautious to avoid making noise, aware that one wrong move could reveal her position. A flicker of movement caught her peripheral vision, a shadow darting behind a cluster of bushes. Her breath hitched, and she froze instinctively, dropping into a crouch. Her eyes locked onto the dark form, trying to determine whether it was an animal or a person. The figure remained hidden, but the disturbance was enough to heighten her senses. She knew she was close. The trail had led her here for a reason. The cliff's edge loomed ahead, a sheer drop into the mist-shrouded valley below. The view was both breathtaking and terrifying, a vast expanse of jagged rocks and tangled trees stretching into the distance. Lena's hand brushed against the rough bark of a nearby tree as she edged closer, eyes scanning for signs of recent activity. A faint scuff mark, perhaps from a shoe dragging something across the dirt, caught her attention. She crouched lower, inching toward the precipice, her heart pounding louder than ever. Suddenly, a sharp snap echoed beneath her foot. She froze, eyes wide, breath held tight. The unnatural sound reverberated through the silent forest. Her mind scrambled to interpret it. Was it a branch breaking, a loose stone, or something more sinister? Her muscles tensed, every nerve alert. Slowly, she shifted her weight, trying to keep her movements minimal, avoiding further noise. Behind her, the rustling grew louder, approaching rapidly. Lena's instincts urged her to turn and confront whatever was coming, but her focus remained on the trail ahead. The footprints seemed to vanish at the cliff's edge, dissolving into scattered dirt and loose stones. Evidence that whoever had been here last was dangerously close to falling or being pushed over. She had to decide: press forward into the unknown or retreat to reassess her options. A sudden, thunderous crack shattered the quiet behind her, followed by muffled curses. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She spun around, dropping into a crouch, eyes darting through the shadows. A figure emerged from behind a tree, hesitant and cautious, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. Her mind raced. Was this an ally or an enemy? The silhouette was vague, obscured by the dying light. The stranger hesitated, then stepped closer, voice rough and strained. "You're close," they rasped, eyes fixed on her. Really close. The words carried a weight of warning, but also a hint of urgency. Lena's grip tightened on her backpack strap, instinctively wary. She studied the figure, trying to gauge whether to trust or to confront. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice tight with suspicion. The stranger paused, then replied, "Someone who might help or might stop you. It depends on what you find at the end of this trail." Lena narrowed her eyes. Every instinct told her to be cautious, yet there was something in the tone that suggested honesty. She took a cautious step forward. "What do you know about this? About the trail?" The stranger's gaze flickered toward the cliff's edge, enough to know that some things are better left untouched. But if you're determined, if you really want to find out, the trail leads to more than just a missing kid. A gust of wind swept the trees, scattering leaves and making the stranger's voice fade into the background. Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. The trail was nearing its end, yet something had shifted, an unspoken warning that the real danger was still ahead. She looked back at the footprints, now faint and partially obscured by the wind and loose gravel, then up at the vast valley below, shrouded in mist. From behind, a faint noise emerged, soft but unmistakable, perhaps footsteps or something heavier. Her grip tightened on her backpack strap. The game had changed. She couldn't tell if she was gaining ground or walking into a trap. The trail was close to its conclusion, but the truth remained hidden in shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Taking a steadying breath, Lena knew hesitation was no longer an option. Nightfall was approaching, and whatever lurked in these woods sensed her presence. Her instincts urged her onward, even as fatigue tugged at her limbs. Glancing once more at the cliff's edge and the shadowed figure beside her, she stepped deeper into the darkness, her resolve hardening against the unknown that awaited. Lena's gaze remained fixed on the trembling figure before her, the dying glow of the sunset casting a reddish hue across the jagged cliff edge. The wind whipped fiercely, tugging at her hair and coat, as if trying to tear her away from this tense standoff. The figure's hands clutched a small, dirt-streaked child tightly, their knuckles blanching, eyes flickering with a mixture of fear, shame, and regret. "Who are you?" Lena demanded, her voice steady but edged with urgency. She kept her distance, wary of any sudden movement. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. The person hesitated, shoulders tense, then finally responded in a trembling voice. I'm just a villager," they stammered. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Lena's brow furrowed. The words sounded rehearsed, evasive. Her eyes scrutinized the face, searching for signs of deception, but instead, she saw a deep, almost tangible remorse. The person's hands trembled uncontrollably, the child pressed against their chest with wide, silent eyes. "What happened? Why did you take him?" Lena asked softly, stepping closer, her tone cautious but firm. Her gaze shifted to the child, noting the torn fabric of his clothes, the dirt smudged across his cheeks. The boy's lips parted slightly, but no sound came. The villager's voice cracked. He wandered too close to the forest. I want to keep him safe. He's my nephew." He was curious, and I thought I could hide him until things cooled down. Lena's eyes narrowed. Hide him from whom? From the authorities? From a village? The person nodded hurriedly. "Yes, I thought if I kept him here, nothing bad would happen. I didn't want him to get hurt or worse. I was trying to protect him." A heavy silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant howl of wind and the rustling leaves. Lena's mind raced, piecing together fragments of the puzzle. This wasn't a simple kidnapping. It was a desperate act by someone pushed to the edge, trying to shield a loved one from unseen threats. Her instincts told her that the situation was more complex than it appeared. She took another cautious step forward. "You realize this isn't the way. He's frightened, but he's safe now. We need to bring him back to the village where he belongs." The villager looked down, tears welling in their eyes. "I didn't want to hurt anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing. The forest, it's dangerous. I saw things, shadows that shouldn't be there. Things I can't explain." Lena's brow furrowed deeper. "What did you see? Tell me everything." The villager hesitated, then exhaled slowly, as if releasing a heavy weight. Strange figures moving at night, sounds that don't belong, and a strange scent, chemical, unnatural. I've lived here all my life, but lately the woods have changed. Something's wrong, and I'm terrified of what it might be. A gust of wind caught her hair, whipping it into her face. Lena's senses sharpened. The man's words aligned with the clues she'd uncovered over the past days. disturbed footprints, unnatural smells, shadows lurking in the darkness. Yet, her focus remained on the trembling child and the conflicted figure before her. Why come here now after all this time? Lena pressed, her voice steady. Why risk everything? The villager looked away, eyes fixed on the horizon. Because I saw something, a shadow moving faster than a person should. Then I found him here, crying alone. I thought I could hide him until I understood what was happening. I didn't want to lose him or get caught in whatever this is. Lena studied the trembling form, sensing the truth in the desperation. But she also saw the dangerous edge of obsession, of misguided protection. Her mind raced through the options, weighing morality against urgency. Listen, she said softly, you've done enough harm. Let's get the boy away from here. No one needs to get hurt, especially not him. The man nodded, tears spilling over. Carefully, he shifted the child into Lena's outstretched arms. The boy was limp with exhaustion, blinking rapidly as he clung to her jacket, trembling from head to toe. As Lena cradled him, she caught a glimpse of the man's face, pale, lined, eyes clouded with remorse. She saw the turmoil within him, a person torn between love and fear, caught in circumstances beyond his control. The realization that his desperation might have led him into dangerous territory weighed heavily on her. She turned toward the forest, ready to lead the boy away, but a strange sensation prickled at her awareness. Shadows still lurked at the edge of her perception, and a faint, unnatural scent persisted. The man's words about shadows and strange chemicals echoed in her mind, hinting at something darker beneath the surface. Stay close, Lena murmured, her voice steady. We're heading back to the village, and then we'll find out what's truly happening here. The villager hesitated, eyes fixed on the distant trees, perhaps haunted by his own fears or regrets. Lena felt a shift within herself, an awakening to the deeper mysteries of the forest, and an understanding that the line between protection and peril was far thinner than she believed. With a final glance at the trembling figure and the frightened child, Lena moved forward, her senses heightened. The sunset's blood-red glow cast long shadows over the cliff, whispering of unseen dangers lurking in the darkness. Whatever secrets the forest held, she knew her confrontation was only beginning, and her choices now could change everything. As she stepped into the shadows, Lena's mind was already racing, not just to uncover the truth, but to prevent the darkness from consuming everything she cared about. The night was closing in, and with it, the real battle was about to begin. Lena stepped cautiously into the village square, the first light of dawn casting long shadows across the cobblestones. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of damp earth and dew-kissed grass, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had gripped these woods just days before. Small clusters of villagers stood scattered around, their faces marked by fatigue and weariness, yet also flickering with a tentative curiosity. Some whispered among themselves, eyes darting toward her with questions that refused to be voiced aloud. She paused at the heart of the square, her gaze sweeping over the familiar surroundings now tinged with an unfamiliar fragility. Her mind still churned with the chaos of recent events, strange footprints, unusual scents, and the sense that something unseen watched from the shadows. The villagers' reactions, fear, suspicion, hope, had pushed her to act. Today, she needed to bridge the growing gap between them, to foster trust where doubt had taken root. Lena cleared her throat softly, drawing their attention. Her voice was steady but gentle, carrying across the quiet space. "Thank you for coming," she began, voice resonating with quiet conviction. "I know the past days have been difficult for everyone. We've faced fears, uncertainties, and moments when hope seemed to slip away. But I believe we've also learned something important, that respecting nature, understanding the wilderness that surrounds us, is essential for all of us to survive and thrive." A few villagers shifted uncomfortably, exchanging cautious glances. An elderly man, his face etched with worry and lines of age, stepped forward hesitantly. His voice was rough but earnest. "And what do you suggest now, Lena? Are we supposed to forget what's happened? Trust the forest again after all that's gone on?" Lena met his gaze, her expression calm. "Trust isn't given blindly. It's built through understanding. The forest isn't our enemy. It's alive, powerful, unpredictable, and deserving of our respect. The recent disturbances remind us that we cannot control everything. Sometimes, nature reveals its true strength when we least expect it, and we must be prepared to listen." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some faces softened, others remained guarded. Lena stepped closer, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. "I've seen how delicate the balance is, and I've learned that silence and observation can teach us more than rushing in with fear. That's why I came, to help protect what remains, to ensure future generations can experience this wilderness without fear or destruction." A young woman, clutching a child's hand tightly, hesitated before speaking softly. "But what about the footprints? The strange scents? Are we supposed to pretend those things didn't happen?" Lena nodded, acknowledging the concern. "No, ignoring them won't make them disappear. But understanding what they mean is crucial. The footprints and scents, they're signs that something or someone is still nearby. Our role is to observe, to learn, and to act responsibly, without panic or blame. We need patience and careful attention." She gestured toward the surrounding woods, their shadows stretching into the morning light. "The forest guards many secrets, some of which we may never fully uncover. But I believe that by working together, your local knowledge and my scientific approach, we can foster a harmony rooted in respect and understanding." A hush fell over the villagers as they exchanged uncertain glances. Some nodded slowly, others remained hesitant. Lena's words resonated with a cautious optimism, a hope that change was possible if they approached the wilderness and each other with patience. Finally, one of the younger men, arms crossed tightly, spoke with a hint of skepticism. "You really think we can live peacefully with the forest after everything?" Lena offered a small, genuine smile. "It begins with respect, listening, observing, and learning. I don't expect us to become perfect overnight, but I believe that understanding is the first step. Recognizing that the woods are alive and vital might change how we see ourselves in this land." The village elder, silent until now, slowly nodded. "Perhaps you're right. Maybe we've been too quick to fear what we don't understand. The forest has been here long before us, and it will remain long after we're gone." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead, casting shifting shadows across the square. The moment felt like a turning point, a fragile seed of change that needed nurturing. Lena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle into the quiet air. "I will stay here as long as you need, she said softly. To listen, to learn, to help. We are all part of this place, its stories, its secrets, its future. Let's honor that together. As she finished, a quiet acceptance spread through the crowd. Some villagers looked relieved, others contemplative. No one spoke immediately, but the atmosphere had shifted, more open, more receptive. The dawn's first rays illuminated the square, casting a warm glow that seemed to promise hope. Lena observed the villagers dispersing gradually, some approaching her with nods or faint smiles. The forest around them seemed to breathe more easily, shadows less ominous, its presence less threatening. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of genuine optimism. Perhaps the fragile harmony could be restored, and her journey toward understanding and trust was only just beginning. In that moment, she realized her role was evolving. No longer just an investigator uncovering secrets, but a guardian of trust, nurturing the delicate balance between humans and the wild. The seed of change was planted, and with patience, it could grow into something enduring. Lena moved deliberately through the dense undergrowth, the early morning sun filtering softly through the canopy, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow. The forest hummed with subtle life. Birds sang in melodic layers. Leaves whispered as a gentle breeze stirred them, and the distant creak of branches announced the awakening of the day. She paused briefly, her gaze sweeping the familiar landscape, now tinged with a quiet sense of purpose. The tension that had gripped her in recent days seemed to loosen, replaced by a calm resolve rooted in her awareness of the subtle signs around her. Her boots pressed quietly on the leaf-strewn trail as she pressed deeper into the woods. Each step was calculated, steady. She had learned to interpret the faintest clues, the faint impressions of small animals, the slight disturbance of foliage, and trusted her instincts more than ever. The air was lighter here, infused with the scent of damp earth and blooming flora, a stark contrast to the oppressive weight of suspicion that had clouded her mind earlier. She knew the forest held secrets, but she also understood that every movement, every scent, was a piece of the larger puzzle. Ahead, a narrow clearing opened, bathed in sunlight. Lena slowed, her eyes narrowing as she studied the space. The area was silent, almost contemplative, yet her senses remained alert. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her notebook, jotting down the sun's position and noting the nearby flora's arrangement. The village's stories about the forest's unpredictability flickered in her mind, but today her focus was on the harmony of this moment, the delicate balance between nature and the unseen human activity that might have left its mark. A gentle breeze stirred the branches, causing a cascade of leaves to drift lazily downward. Lena inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the crisp, cool air. Her fingers brushed the rough bark of an ancient oak, grounding her in the reality of this living monument. She cast a quick glance over her shoulder, where the village lay behind her, a cluster of modest homes now distant and peaceful under the rising sun. Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible sound caught her attention. She froze, ears straining. It was a soft, rhythmic rustling, like fabric shifting or a small creature scurrying through the underbrush. Her senses sharpened. She moved toward the sound with quiet precision, her steps light but deliberate. The noise led her to a fallen branch, partly hidden beneath moss and leaves. She crouched, brushing aside the greenery, revealing a cluster of footprints, tiny, hurried, and recent. The tracks veered away from the main trail, heading toward a thicket of dense bushes. Lena's eyes narrowed further. She knelt, studying the impressions. Imprints of small shoes, perhaps a child's, pressed hurriedly into the soft soil. Nearby, a faint smear of dirt suggested someone had dragged something along the ground. Her mind raced, connecting the clues. An escape, perhaps, or a hurried movement driven by fear. She reached into her pocket again, pulling out a small plastic bag. Carefully, she collected a sample of the disturbed soil, sealing it with meticulous care. Every detail could be significant now: the scent, the pattern of footprints, the terrain. As she worked, her nose detected a subtle, unfamiliar odor, a metallic tang mixed with something chemical. Her brow furrowed. This was no natural forest scent. It hinted at human intervention, perhaps remnants of an earlier disturbance or something more sinister. A flicker of movement behind a dense curtain of branches drew her attention. Her hand instinctively went to her equipment belt. She froze, alert. Through the foliage, she glimpsed a fleeting figure, indistinct, hurried, disappearing deeper into the thicket. Her heartbeat quickened, but her expression remained composed. No panic, only heightened caution. She slowly rose, scanning the surroundings. The footprints continued, leading her toward a small, makeshift shelter, twigs and leaves woven together in a haphazard attempt at concealment. She approached carefully, crouching beside it. Inside, she found remnants of a recent fire, small charred sticks, ash, and a faint trail of smoke lingering in the cool air. The scene suggested recent activity, yet no one was nearby. Her gaze shifted upward, catching a glimpse of a thin, tangled vine hanging from a branch. She reached out and gently pulled it down, revealing a small, folded piece of cloth half buried beneath leaves. She unfolded it cautiously, revealing a fragment of fabric, brightly colored, torn, with smudges of dirt and a faint trace of sweat. It could belong to the missing child or someone trying to hide their trail. A sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying a faint chemical odor that lingered just beyond her perception. Lena's senses sharpened once more. She knew she had to act quickly but carefully. This was no longer just about following footprints. It was about deciphering the deeper layers of activity, signs of a hurried departure, of a struggle, of secrets buried beneath the surface. She backed away from the camp, her eyes scanning the forest's edge. The morning light filtered through the branches, casting shifting shadows across the ground. Her mind was clear. She had uncovered enough to understand that the forest concealed darker truths. Someone or something had been here recently, and the evidence pointed to an urgent escape, possibly driven by fear or desperation. As she turned to leave, her gaze caught sight of a broken vine, snapped cleanly as if torn by force. She hesitated, then followed the trail of broken greenery, which led her toward a narrow, rocky outcrop. There, partially hidden among the stones, she spotted a small, weathered backpack, its straps torn, dirt smudged across its surface. She approached cautiously and unzipped it, revealing a jumble of belongings: a worn photograph, a torn piece of cloth, a crumpled map marked with hastily scrawled symbols. The discovery shifted her understanding. This was no ordinary campsite. It was a staging point, possibly used by someone fleeing or hiding. The map indicated a route deeper into the woods, one not marked on official trails. She pocketed the items, her mind racing with new possibilities. This could be a lead to the missing child or an individual with knowledge of hidden places. A sudden, sharp sound behind her broke her concentration, a rustling in the bushes, quick and deliberate. Her hand instinctively went to her weapon, but she remained still, listening. The figure emerged cautiously, a young man with wary eyes, clutching a bundle of cloth. His face was streaked with dirt, and his hands trembled slightly. He raised his hands slowly, speaking hurriedly in a low voice. "You're too late. They're gone already. Move deeper before dawn. I saw them last night, but I couldn't stop them." His voice was strained, eyes darting nervously. Lena studied him carefully. His appearance and words suggested he was involved in the recent activity, but not necessarily a threat. She lowered her weapon slightly, her gaze steady. "Where did they go? Which way?" she asked calmly. He hesitated, then nodded toward the east, pointing to a faint trail winding between the trees. They headed that way, toward the old quarry. "I saw footprints, fresh ones. You might catch up if you move quickly." Without wasting time, Lena nodded and turned toward the indicated direction. As she moved, she kept her senses alert, aware that her understanding of the situation had deepened. The clues pointed to a coordinated effort. Someone had been here recently, fleeing from something or someone, leaving behind evidence of a hurried escape. The forest shadows lengthened as she pressed on, the morning light growing brighter, casting the woods in a golden hue. The whispers of leaves and distant calls of birds seemed to echo her own thoughts, of secrets buried, of truths waiting to be uncovered. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, trusting her instincts and the evidence she had gathered. By the time she reached the edge of the quarry, the landscape opened up, revealing a wide, rocky expanse. The footprints continued here, leading toward a narrow tunnel carved into the hillside. She paused briefly, considering her next move. The trail was fresh, and the air carried a faint metallic scent, proof that her pursuit was still active. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. The game had changed. The clues she had uncovered confirmed that someone had been here recently, and that they were moving swiftly and deliberately. Her understanding of the situation had evolved from simple curiosity to a complex picture of escape, concealment, and potential danger. As Lena stepped into the shadows of the tunnel, she felt the weight of the forest's secrets pressing around her. Yet, her resolve was unshaken. She was now part of this unfolding story, an active participant in uncovering the truth hidden beneath the tangled roots and silent trees. The forest was alive, watching, waiting, and she was ready to listen.